All right, welcome to Shotgun Saturday, the 10th episode of Shotgun Saturday Night, ladies and gentlemen. Today, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday as I was recording this, I actually did the Elizabeth Wilkinson podcast, ladies and gentlemen, and now I am doing John L. Sullivan, the Boston Strongman. But, ladies and gentlemen, I have some news I want to calm myself down here, ladies and gentlemen. Before we continue with this and the hype, the story of John L. Sullivan, ladies and gentlemen, I do like to point out one information. Ladies and gentlemen, before we talk about John L. Sullivan, ladies and gentlemen, and his career, I do want to talk about this. Considering, guys, I do barely have a few gigabytes on my computer right now, and my entire computer is filled up with videos and other projects. I've recorded every single podcast, and guys, as I'm recording this, as it's on the 26th, and it is my birthday today, right now, on the 26th, right now, as I'm turned 27 right now. I recorded my Elizabeth. I recorded my Elizabeth Wilkinson video yesterday ago as uploading on the 30th, and today is the 6th. And even though I am a couple days away, as I'm recording this, ladies and gentlemen, I am trying to take my time trying to record the UFC 7, the Buffalo event in Buffalo. So I'm trying my best to take a break from doing Mr. Glow podcast. I've done 98 episodes. As you viewers are watching this, I released every single Mr. Glow podcast I've done. I might be working on so much stuff right now that I'm already taking a hiatus from doing Mr. Glow podcast right now. I think it's best for me to step back from talking about boxing. After watching some NASCAR races and surprising 4-wide finish in the Daytona race, which I wish Ryan Blaney didn't win the race. I wish someone else won the race, but it is what it is. So I think I'm going to talk about other sports. I'm going to take a break from doing boxing, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's probably for the best. And guys, even though congratulations to a female boxer of Yasmin Artiga retaining her WBA super flyweight champion. I hope her and Mizuki Hiruta fight for the belt, so good luck. Even though Mizuki Hiruta is already fighting in November. And also, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still trying to look up competitors such as Ike Iabuchi, because I heard that Ike Iabuchi fought against some random dude. And as I'm recording this right now, BoxRec still has his record unknown when he took on an 18-8 fighter, also from Nigeria. Not much of a fighter. So, don't know the information about when Ike Iabuchi's record is going to come up on his 21st professional fight. We still trying to find out if he still has what it takes. We don't know if he won the fight or not. I'm still trying to find video evidence or so on how the fight ended. But whatever happens, we just hope this information will come up sooner enough. So that's all I'm going to have to say about boxing, ladies and gentlemen. But guys, as I'm doing UFC 7 of the fight in Buffalo, or if that's what UFC 7 is called, UFC 7, what's UFC 7 called again? UFC 7, The Brawl in Buffalo, which is also on September the 8th, 1995. So I'm recording it as its 30th anniversary as we're speaking. And then, guys, when that episode is released, which is a couple weeks away as I'm recording this, my 100th episode of Mr. Glow podcast will be on the 3rd week of September, which will be days after. I think it's going to be some days after the Canelo Alvarez or Terrence Crawford fight happens, and probably after the Naoya Inoue fight, which he's also fighting on the 14th of Sunday of September, one day after Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford. So that will be my 100th episode. But I'm also going to come up with a 3-hour episode, as I'm going to think about doing a 3-hour episode of that 100th episode, Mr. Gold podcast. So I do want to save my energy, ladies and gentlemen, which is probably for the best, that consider this is episode 10 of Shotgun Saturday Night. I'm going to take a hiatus from doing combat sports as we speak. So this episode is going to be short. And even though it's been 5 minutes since I recorded, so with all that being said, let's talk about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, John L. Sullivan, a fighter that talked about his career, and even though I have given to him as much as I can, because, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to get into the understanding of who he was. Because John L. Sullivan, a guy that was like a huge pugilistic of a person that brought his fear and dangerousness in the competition, made him into an icon hero. But ladies and gentlemen, during his time, I have talked about his career in New England, so I would rather just ignore his boxing career and talk about how he became champion. So guys, a documentary did had some interesting stuff to talk about, but ladies and gentlemen, there's other things out there that we might have to know. Ladies and gentlemen, in the year of 1881, a man with wax on his mustache, born in Ireland, went off to America. The guy was named Paddy Ryan. A man with wax on his mustache, but an ironclad. The Trojan Giant. Unfortunately, guys, the guy was 5'11", and with 10 professional fights in his career, with major fights only exhibitions included, he only had 2 wins, 1 knockout, 7 losses, and 3 draws. So what happened? How did he have 2 wins? To be honest, guys, his career has started off differently than other people. Because in 1880, on May the 30th, ladies and gentlemen, Paddy O'Ryan fought his first professional fight for the American bare knuckle champion, where he fought against a guy named Jem Mace, where he had been inactive for many years and was believed to have vacated the title, making it an open for contention. According to several sources, the fight with Goss and Ryan's first real prize fight, though he had done combat before to decades dispute, sometimes with established boxers on their arrival into working capital of Pennsylvania, the mayor of Pittsburgh made it clear to both parties that the illegal fight would not take place in his city. So the combatants moved to a more remote spot in West Virginia. Back then, ladies and gentlemen, prize fighting was just not legal in all places around the world. So that's what he did. On May the 30th, ladies and gentlemen, the significance of his career. Paddy Ryan went to the bare knuckle heavyweight championship against Joe Goss. And for the heck of it, he came out as a champion. On May the 30th, it took them 87 rounds. So guys, in 1880, Joe Goss and Paddy O'Ryan fought 87 rounds. And after 87 rounds, Paddy Ryan won when Goss was unable to continue and the contest was stopped after 90 minutes. Ryan's final blow was a right that knocked out Goss. Up until that time, the fight was tight and well contested. Goss's second claim, a foul in the 87th, and him being unable to continue, the judges awarded the bout to Ryan. His opponent appeared winded, but Ryan was terribly battered around the face and body and was nearly 20 pounds heavier and nearly 6 inches taller than Goss. Even there's a discrepancy which would have never been allowed in today's boxing and may have made the difference in the match. Yeah, it was crazy. because being 20 pounds heavier and 6 inches taller, that's an unfair advantage, which is weird because even though Joe Goss was short and he was only 5'8", not a heavy person. Like he was only a middleweight fighter. Not much to talk about there. So but of course guys, he would live until 1885 at the age of 46. As for Paddy O'Ryan, he would pass away until December of 1900 at 49. So at 1872 is when he was born. He was 18 years old when he fought 87 rounds. He went on to establish some other fights or so, but in 1882, in New Orleans, Louisiana, ladies and gentlemen, the Boston Strong Boy fought tough competition, tooth and nail. The competition win is this, ladies and gentlemen. For about 7 rounds of competition, after having tough, dangerous knuckles. Because, guys, for 8 rounds, or even 9 rounds, the Strong Boy came out, and after having a grueling, heavy right punch straight to the jaw, Paddy O'Ryan was down. It was the greatest moment ever. So there's not a lot of information to say about that. The Boston Strong Boy defeated him in like guys, Paddy Ryan won the title in 87 rounds, and John Sullivan won it after only 9 rounds. Because there was no formal boxing title that existed and became the champion defeating him in Mississippi. And even though the modern authorities have retroactively labeled Ryan the heavyweight champion in America, but any claim to Ryan's being a world champion would have been dubious because he had never contended internationally as Sullivan had. So take that for what you will. But all we know is the real story came years later. Because later, in 1885, ladies and gentlemen, in 1885, and guys, I don't like talking about professional boxing as much in this channel, but it just has to be cleared. We had to make this clear in his day, because this is the real history of boxing here. It just you just can't make this stuff up. So did you guys know that in 1885, the inaugural heavyweight championship for the first inaugural title in professional boxing was contested in 7 rounds? 2 fighters fought in 7 rounds. Just 7 rounds. That was it. And the history goes as this. So John L. Sullivan at the time, after he was the champion at the time, back then, as I said before, he did have interesting fights against some interesting fighters he fought, but a lot of them were debut nobodies. So that's what he was. But in August 29th, 1885, he fought for the inaugural World Heavyweight Championship of the lineal title in professional boxing against Dominic McCaffrey. The guy had 7 wins, 2 losses, 3 draws, and 1 no contest fight, or probably another. But still, there was nothing much to say about the fight. Now, the bout was scheduled for a 6-rounder, but owing to a mistake, a 7th round was fought with hard gloves. On the August the 30th, 1885, the Sunday Boston Globe article states that the referee declared Sullivan the winner by 7-round foul, which on BoxRec it said the bout is won by points decision of 7/6, which meant that they went 7 rounds after a 6-round bout, because it was supposed to be a 6-round fight, but it ended with a 7-round bout with an extra round. So take that for what you will. But yeah, it said that the winner of a 7th round foul. And on pages 1 and 2, they said that the time consumed in the fight was 26 minutes and 20 seconds. So 4 rounds were fought in 3 minutes each. One of them was 3 minutes and 15 seconds, and one of them was 1 minute and 45 seconds, and a 6 minutes were lost between other rounds. So a seventh round came in, and then the bout ended in the seventh round, which was supposed to be 6 rounds. All in all, it was a 7 round bout at the end, and Sullivan won. So what did he do after he became champion? The real story comes in as he did. Now, guys, I don't want to talk about the James Corbett fight of 1892 because that would be too much. And even though there is a photo of John L. Sullivan boxing with gloves and where he stands over McCraffy during a bout in front of some people in the stands, and even though this was during the time of they were under the Marquis of Queensberry rules, which I have talked about this recently, so take this what you will. And by the way, McCraffy did earn a shot for this title when he fought in 1884 in October against Charlie Mitchell, one of Sullivan's fighters he fought some years ago. Win an outstanding English fight, which took place in Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden, 1884. That's ridiculous. So that's and this fight took place in a drive-in park in Chester Drive-in Park near Cincinnati, Ohio. So whatever you like to say about that is ridiculous. So what was the rest of his career in professional boxing? Well, in 1886, he takes on a 4-0 fighter named Frank Herard and wins by a technical fight decision when the police intervene. And back in those days, police officers did intervene in matches. Another fight a couple months later, won, and then had a draw against... He fought against Paddy Ryan in 1886 when Paddy Ryan debuted in professional boxing in his first fight. Did not do good. He got knocked out by a round 3 KO in that fight against Sullivan. Yeah, 4 years later, wasn't good. And then we had a random draw in January of 86 where Sullivan barely almost lost the fight, and he broke his left arm in the first round, and after 6 rounds was an uneventful fight. So goes to show you, the greatest you are, sometimes it could come to an end. But of course, a few years later, by 1892, that would become his demise. 20 rounds with James J. Corbin, that was it. But what happened before all that happened? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the real story came to Sullivan's career when he finally had a match. The modern authorities of Heavyweight Championship of the World were likely referring to the championship belt presented to Sullivan in Boston on August the 8th, 1887. On Wikipedia, it says here, the belt was inscribed presented to the champion of champions of John L. Sullivan by the citizen of the United States. Its centerpiece featured the flag of the U.S., Ireland, and the U.K. During the modern authorities referred to the heavyweight championship. The Charlie Mitchell fight of 1888 is when there was a time when Sullivan did fought other fighters at the time, because in 1888 he fought against a 3-round fight against William Samuels and got him in round 3 by the final round. The Charlie Mitchell fight in March was crazy when he fought to retain the bare knuckle champion. But then, ladies and gentlemen, on July the 8th, 1889, in Richburg, Mississippi, in an outdoor arena with hard dirt, a guy named Jake Kilrain stepped into a boxing ring. To put it as, quote, Pretty Jim won't last a few rounds. Now, guys, let me tell you something. I made a mistake because I actually forgot that was something else. Ignore that last thing I said. Now, Jake Kilrain had 31 wins, 18 knockouts, 5 losses, 8 draws, 3 no contests, and he passed away in 1937 on December the 22nd, Massachusetts, at 78 years old, which makes you wonder how he managed to live after this fight in 1889, because this was like the end of his career. Um, because the rest of his career in boxing was over. So he did had some claims to the title at the time, but this is the craziest thing. Now, the Sullivan and Kilrain fight is the last greatest of bare knuckle boxing, and the information I will try to find says a lot. Keep that in mind. So, ladies and gentlemen, this bout was actually credited as a $20,000 bout. The stakes were on $10,000 for each fighter for $20,000 total. The only prize money was for the two fighters for whoever wins. This was the turning point to boxing history because this was the last ever fight under the London prize fighting rules of bare knuckle. And there are photographs of this incident in bare knuckle. The bouts of competition came in when one of the first sporting events in Boston received national press coverage, and they went on to box this way through. And on Rochester, ladies and gentlemen, reporter Arch Morrell commented that occasionally Sullivan would escape from his guard in Belfast Village. The cry was heard that John L. is loose again. Send for Mullidoon. Mullidoon would snatch the champ away from the bar and take him back to their training camp. And this was during the build-up of the fight. So they went to an outdoor arena on July the 4th, 1889, ladies and gentlemen. It was about 4 days before the event took place, and Kentucky newspapers say that Sullivan-Kilrain prize fight, which is to take place in Louisiana on the next Monday, is now the most talked about event in sporting circles. The stakes were on, and 4 days later, an estimated of 3,000 spectators went to the area location, and it was around the fight when it began at 10:30 a.m. But it first looked like Sullivan was going to lose, and the first fall of blood was awarded to Kilrain. It said that Sullivan vomited during the 44th round, but however, the champion got his second win and was able to turn things around to himself. And there was moments in a grueling beatdown because Kilrain's manager finally threw in the towel in the 75th round to say no more. And just to let you guys know, the governor of Mississippi offered a $1,000 reward for each fighter. But the story ends here, where today a historical marker is located at the site of the fight just off Interstate 59, and the fight is immortalized by the Sullivan-Kilrain Road, which runs through the site of the event at the corner of Richburg Road. So whether you guys find Richburg Road and the Sullivan-Kilrain and the Interstate 59, you'll know where that area is, because I'm sure it was really fun. But man, can you imagine watching guys, 87 rounds, 75 rounds. Guys, how boring was boxing back then? I really don't know. I don't know how boring boxing was back then, but considering that fans, I hope they got their money's worth because no one had to pay for the event. But I think at the end of the day, guys, I think this was the reason what made boxing that great in today's world, and that's what made this great. So I think at the end of the day, guys, we could go our separate ways and say that this was a spectacular event. And even though John Sullivan would not get a good break again in 1892, his legacy in that decade of 1882 to 1892 is still a legacy that we shall never forget, because he still made a full decade that amazing. And I think we have to respect that for what it is. And that's the way life goes. So anyway, guys, thank you, viewers, for watching this podcast. Sorry for making this one short, but you know what? It's probably for the best because my throat is hurting so bad. And guys, I can barely go to bed right now, waking up in the morning because I'm sorry for my throat being this bad right now, because yesterday it was even horrible when I started talking too much, but this is the main reason why it's so hard for me to actually continue. So, this is, guys, I have a feeling this might be the last episode I'll do of bare knuckle boxing, because depending on how many views I'll get, if people will enjoy it. But guys, however, I will make this announcement. Guys, if this video gets 10,000 views, I will do another video. And I will continue the show and this entire series as we speak. So we'll see about that. I will upload this part of this clip as a YouTube short to see what viewers say. And with that being said, see you next time, I hope. And with that being said, all hail to the Boston Strong Boy. See ya.